Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, Peak Performance Coach Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I am your host, Brian Bosley. And today, before we get started, I just want to share with you a nice heart letter that came in just yesterday through, I believe, text, or a couple of days ago. And this Bamboo Pack member was referring to Kim Casey Campbell's episode, the A-10 Warthog fighter pilot from the Air Force. And he said that was such a great story. That guest was so great. Her story about being embarrassed when her 3-year-old son interrupted by climbing on her lap in the front of her team, making her human and gaining her more respect, that was so good. And that's that stuff we've been talking about lately. A lot of this vulnerability, about being vulnerable, is a source of strength for people. So, Bamboo Pack member, thank you for reaching out and saying how much that particular episode meant to you. All right, well, I just want to welcome 2 new countries to the Bamboo Lab leader membership program, Austria and Colombia. You are countries number 48 and 49 joining this year, and we welcome you aboard. And as I always say, I'll do my best to make sure you get the best podcast we can possibly provide to you. So welcome aboard. All right, today I want to take up just a couple of moments here, a little longer than normal, to a special dedication. This episode is dedicated to Paul Hendricks and his memory, especially to my cousin Tacheny, who was the love of his life, and to Paul's 3 children and his family and loved ones. Paul passed away February 26th at the young age of 48 years old after a very courageous battle with colon cancer. And I reached out to my cousin, who was very distraught, and I said, I really want to dedicate my next episode to Paul, but I never had the privilege and honor of meeting him, and I've heard so many great stories. So she just wrote what she thought about Paul, and I said, hey, can I just read what you wrote? And she said, by all means, please. So this is a letter. This is what my cousin, Tacheny, wrote to me about Paul just a couple of days ago. So I'm going to read it. It's a couple paragraphs long. She said, Paul made sure with the time that he had to make sure everyone knew how much he loved them. He never wasted a second of his time since being diagnosed in 2018. He was so good at the simple things in life. He listened better than anyone I've ever met. We didn't think this time would have been this short, but in one short amount of time, he made me feel like I was loved for 1,000 years. He would write notes and leave them behind just to remind you of how much he loved you. He did it for me, and he did it for his children. We are all here on borrowed time, and should waste no seconds letting the people you know just exactly how much you love them, and don't waste your time on the dumb stuff like life throws at us sometimes. I don't live a second of regret with Paul, nor would he, because he taught me that communication is key. The simplest of gestures are key. The looking at you like you are the only person in the room is key. My biggest takeaway, our love was silent. We loved each other and didn't have to tell the world, because the 2 of us together were the world, and that's all we needed. Paul is love, 100% pure love. Wow. Well, Paul, this goes out to your memory. This goes out to my lovely cousin Tacheny, to Paul's 3 children, and all of his loved ones that were left behind. Godspeed on your journey, Paul. All right, today we'll get started. Now, I want to tell you, this guest I've never met, which is true with most of my guests, I guess, but we've been friends on Facebook for a few years, and I've had several people from her company, maybe 8 or 9, from Ameriprise Financial on my podcast, just because that was my mothership. That's where I started my professional journey back in the early 90s, I guess. And everybody I talk to says, hey, you got to get Sabrina Tacheny on your podcast. I'm like, yeah, I see her on Facebook, man. And she's always up on stage and she's always talking. And everybody said, man, she is a class act, professional, great leader. She's the whole package as far as what you look for in a professional leader. So I reached out to her a couple of weeks ago. We had a little a pre-interview, I think on the 22nd of February, I think it was, and was so impressed with her that I was so excited when she agreed to come on. So we have Sabrina Tacheny on today. She's a field vice president with Ameriprise Financial, and she's in charge of the Florida and South Alabama region. And I'm not going to read a lot of her bio because she's going to share that. She's going to share with you. You're going to get to know her as we go on. But she's responsible for ensuring that advisors in her team have access to resources to run and grow their practice. By combining the vision they established for their practice with the support from her team and the resources from the Ameriprise, the large company Ameriprise, she gives the financial advisors the opportunity to experience growth, equity ownership, and success. But here's some cool things. Here are some of her career highlights. She won the Chairman's Award for Excellence in 2013. In 2019, she was awarded the Ameriprise Outstanding Leader Award, and in 2012, she chartered the local Pride Employee Network. I mean, you're going to hear from her in a minute. And here, you're going to say, "Hey, I get why you have her on here." She likes to travel around the country to new countries with her husband. She likes working with abused women and children through shelters, and she enjoys the abundance of books and mindfulness through yoga and meditation. And I hope we're going to get into a couple of books today because we both shared the love of two particular books when we had our pre-interview. But without further ado, I think most importantly, and I gotta say this, and she doesn't know I'm going to say this, but her daughter, Jasmine, just recently placed first place in her state competition for entrepreneurship business ideas. And the only freshman. She was the only freshman there. She earned the nickname the Silent Assassin. And now she goes on to California for the national competition in April. So, Jasmine, you've got the whole entire Bamboo Pack supporting you. We're going to be cheering you on coming here in April. So you go get them, girl, man. You take the whole darn thing. So, all right, without further ado, Sabrina Tacheny, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast, my new friend.
Thanks, Brian. I'm so honored to be here. And what a cool nickname, right? Silent Assassin.
It's a perfect nickname.
That. It is a perfect nickname for her. So,
that was so cool when I saw that. Like, man, what that does, Sabrina, like for me, I'm sure for you too, and so many of us, is it gives us hope for the future that we have this next generation coming up that are level-headed, clear-headed, have these business insights, and and have the drive to do it. So, man, I think that's so cool. I think it's a good thing for the family, good thing for you and Jasmine, but really good thing for the entire world to have young people like this coming up.
Absolutely. It's the next gen that we have to leave little seeds along the way too, right? That's our job.
Right.
So.
One of my friends, Sabrina, always says, his name is Jeff, and he always said, our job is like watching fish or salmon go up the river. We just have to push our children a little further up or down the river than we were. And then they have to do the same thing for their children. He said, that's how we grow as a society and grow as a species.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so, when we talked on the 22nd, Sabrina, I got to know a little bit about you. I got to hear your story, which I found just fascinating. But the Bamboo Pack might not, some of them know a lot about you, but a lot of them don't. Can you share with us your journey, your story, where you came from, who or what inspired you growing up, et cetera, whatever you'd like to share?
Sure, absolutely. So let me first say my condolences for your loss. I am honestly emotional right now. I'm so young. I just turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, and my mom passed away, and I'll share a little bit about that with the battle with cancer as well. So just my heart goes out to you and your family during this time. But a little bit about myself is, my journey. I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. A lot of my identity in who I believe, has transpired who I am today comes from that immigrant, that resiliency of being born in Buenos Aires, being here as an immigrant and not knowing the language at all. I came here when I was 12 years old, and really seeing my parents struggle through what it is, that new culture, new language, new everything, really creating all for the efforts of creating a brighter future for my brother Alex and myself. And so through them and through a lot of what those changes of cultures meant, I think that drove me to continuing to aspire to be a better version of myself. And a lot of what I give Jasmine, right, I think is being able to be grateful for so many opportunities that honestly this country has afforded myself, my family, and the next generation of my family to come. Every time that I go back to Argentina, I see in my entire family still there. Only my brother and my father are here with me, and I just see everything that they have to go through and some of the struggles of being in a socialist economy and all of that. What it means to them. So, but let me give you a little bit about myself and my story of how I came to Ameriprise. Right, you said that that was your first mothership, and how I came to Ameriprise and how I got into my role. So, when I came, as I mentioned, I came into this country when I was 12 years old. My parents, the way that they migrated to the United States was through an investment visa. They owned restaurants and more of like a wholesaling, catering business in Argentina, and that afforded them over a honestly 15-year process of being able to come to the United States. But once they were able to legally come to the United States, that's where they came and they started a restaurant business in Las Vegas. And so I very quickly, if anybody that's been in the restaurant industry or has parents in the restaurant business or any association knows that it's a 24/7 job and all hands on deck, especially when you're starting. So I remember the bus or whoever was giving me a ride from school, dropping me right into the restaurant. I would first do all my homework and then it was right into work. My dad had this saying that is stuck to me until this day, and so much of my work ethic goes this way. He used to say, "Hey, Sabrina, if because in the restaurant you have busy time and you have the rush hour, but you also have downtime, right? And when it's not busy, and if there's no tables and there's no customers coming in, he would, if he ever saw us or my brother standing around, he would say, every time that you're standing around, you're stealing money from me. There's always something to be done, and there's always something to do." So that tells you a lot of how my upbringing was. But so long story short, growing up in the restaurants, I fell in love with really the entrepreneurship, being a business owner, really a lot of the personal affiliation and greeting. I used to love having customers. Customers comes that they become honestly your friends, and over time I actually still maintain some of those friendships in Las Vegas from customers that used to come to my parents' restaurants all the time. Soon enough, I went into and ventured into building my own restaurant. So I partnered with my father. We had our own business, our own restaurants, and then the wholesaling company itself. We venture into other sides of the business and wholesaling meats, and all in that same avenue of food service industry and so forth. I did get my degree, both bachelor's and master's in economics, and so that's where my finance and my affiliation for finance was always there. But I did want to own my businesses and continue to grow my entrepreneur side of it. In 2008, long story short, there's a lot in between, but we ventured eventually to Florida, mostly because my husband, who I married very young at the age of 20, was in the NBA basketball career, and he was with the Orlando Magic. And so that also ventures us into Florida to and I continue on with what was the restaurant business in the food industry. But in 2008, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I got pregnant with Jasmine, my now 14-year-old, and as you can imagine, it just created a big question mark in my life and my future and what I wanted to continue to do. And at that time, my father decided we needed to sell everything, really take care of my mom. We moved, and I needed to be there for my family and also raise my daughter, right? And dedicate a lot more time. So we moved back to Las Vegas, where my mom was and my dad was residing, and we sold all our businesses. I have to be honest, we sold it at a loss, right? In 2008, it was not the greatest time to be selling, and it took us probably a good 3 years to unwind everything that we had. And so we restarted. I said, okay, what will be my new career? And I didn't know which doors would open next. And as I continued to explore what I wanted to do, as I was helping my mom go through chemo and go through radiation and everything that she was going through to fight for cancer, and my dad, they had worked so hard to build their own business, to build their own wealth without any knowledge of really anything when it came to finances, right? They didn't have any health insurance. They didn't have any disability. They barely contributed to an IRA, and were not only not prepared for the unexpected of the disease that came, but really not in any way saving appropriately for any sort of retirement. And not at anybody's fault, but just pure unawareness and naive, not having the knowledge, of being mostly immigrants in this country. And I said, this cannot happen. And I always had a love and affiliation for finance, being having my education in economics. And I said, this needs to change. My dad was also a bishop, he is again a bishop in the Las Vegas community, and he oversees a Spanish speaking ward. And I was seeing the same for a lot of the Spanish speaking individuals in his ward and so I said, okay, I need to do something about it. So I interviewed with a couple of firms. I won't name them here, but I interviewed with a couple of firms, and I interviewed with Ameriprise. I was offered a position with all of them, but Ameriprise really struck out to me because it wasn't just about selling any specific product at all. It was really about understanding the individual's goals, what was happening in their life, really caring about that and having that human connection and being able to together formulate a customized solution and plan that was going to help that family achieve what they were looking for. And that really spoke to me, spoke to what I was going through, what my family was going through in that time. And so I started with Ameriprise, started in the advisor center and then in the service center really quickly. Later on, wanted to expand my wings and be able to, because of my entrepreneur background, my leadership background, and owning my own business, I said, okay, how do I scale myself instead of, what if I can go into the leadership route and instead of just helping one client at a time, help advisors really grow their business so I can really help more and more and more, right? And so that led me into Minneapolis, and I was a regional sales manager for the South region in Minneapolis. And I was able to, I did a great Pride event, and I have a lot of affiliation for that community. They have gone through their own struggles as well, right? And to be seen, heard, and have their own voice. I did a great event, got me consistently noticed. And then I always wanted to come back to Florida. I didn't know when those doors were open, but always trusting the process, always trusting that the universe will show me the way, as long as I continue to really be anchored in my values and work through my passion. And it happened quicker than I wanted, which helped because I was feeling a little bit of a fish out of water sometimes, being in cold Minnesota. And that led me into being the regional sales manager, the franchise recruiting engagement manager in Florida for under Brian Moore's leadership at that time, who was the field vice president. And then I had a couple of opportunities to actually in 2019 to leave Florida and maybe be a field vice president for another. At that time would have been a promotion and maybe go into the other side of complex director, but sometimes, Brian, what happens is life opens these doors. And I remember in 2019, when those doors were opening, my mom's cancer came back. And I might get emotional here.
No, you take your time.
And yeah, and I remember really having to make those decisions within, honestly, not even 30 days of her going into hospice and moving. And I remember being in her hospital bed and her holding my hand and saying, Savity, that's what she used to call me, and say, Savity, you have to follow your heart and you have to do what is right for your family. And there's going to be a door that will open that will feel in so much strong alignment, not only with your career and where you're looking to move, but it's also in alignment with what's best for Jasmine, and it's what's best for you to continue to flourish. And it was funny. I had a very similar conversation with Trace Roquette, who is probably the best leader that I have ever known, who is my boss right now. And I said, Trace, here are all the options that I have. And at the hospital, he said, very similar words. It's like, Sabrina, I will always support you in any decision that you have to make in your career. But just know that at some point, everything will align, where your career will align, your family will align, and your self-leadership will align. And without knowing what would be next, I turned everything, those opportunities down to follow my values. Little did I know that 6 months after that, I would be offered the Florida VP position, which is exactly what I was offering in other territories. So I say that because sometimes we don't know what's ahead of us. But I think it's, again, if we trust our hearts and we trust and we anchor ourselves in our values. And when life will throw at us competing values, right? Because one of my values is achievement, is challenging myself for growth. But it's also family, it's also integrity. And so when we trust ourselves that something will come, that it will be aligned to all of it, life has a funny way of showing you the way, and having those doors be opened. So I went a little bit long on that first one, Brian, but I hope that was helpful for those listeners that you have.
Well, that's the story, Sabrina, I wanted you to share with that question, because that's the story you shared with me back on the 22nd of February when we spoke. And I think the audience needs to hear that. I really want to reiterate to the Bamboo Pack listeners out there is what Sabrina's mother shared with her. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but when she said, Sabrina, I know she had a different name, or she called you a different name, but she said, you have to follow your heart and do what's best for your family. A door will open. And I want everyone out there right now who, again, for so many people stuck on that hamster wheel, making decisions about your future, you're scared of your future. Maybe you've got multiple decisions to make. Go back to what Sabrina said. She said, the universe will show me the way if I stay anchored to my values and follow my purpose. So I think what she has shown in that first few minutes of the podcast is when you do that, great things happen. You can call it coincidence, luck, manifestation, whatever you want to call it. But if you can stay true to anchored to your values and stay true to your purpose, doors will open. The problem is so often many of us don't know what our true values are. So I'm going to tell everyone right now, if you don't, go to a website called thinktoperform.com. And the 2 is the number 2, Think to Perform. And they're an amazing company. They were run by a lot of former Ameriprise executives. So we're all from the same mothership. Doug Linnick, Chuck Wackendorfer, Ray Kelly. I mean, this is just some top-notch people. Those three have been on my podcast so far. And they have a values test to take on there. Explore the website. Check it out, man. There's some really good stuff on there. Determine what your top 5 values are. But that's a good start right there. Then you can start making decisions based on that as a foundation in life. And make sure every decision you make honors, it does not disintegrate or tear down your values. Doors will open, just like they did for Sabrina. And her mother gave the best possible advice while she was in hospice by saying, you have to follow your heart and do what's best for your family. Doors will open. So that was powerful, man. That was really powerful. And, I got a question. You graduated high school at 16 years old? How the heck did that happen? I barely graduated at 18.
So my mom, oh my goodness, she was such an amazing woman. But we were talking about how do you have to push your kids, right? And so my mom, we came to the United States, and my mom made me skip a grade. And I said, Mom, I don't even know the language. How am I going to skip the grade? But if we went to fairly good school in Argentina, and I was pretty advanced in math and science, and so she's like, well, math is a universal language. You will learn English really quickly. Just embrace yourself. So I skipped 7th grade. I never went to 7th grade. And I went directly into 8th grade. And then I took a lot of, in high school, I went to a magnet school and was able to graduate early and take a lot of the credits ahead of time. And so yeah. So that's my quick story.
Did you have a hard time going into college at such a young age? Or did you skip a little while? Did you wait a while? That's really young to go out on your own and be in college.
Yeah. So I took a semester off, and then I went into college at 17.
Sabrina, I wasn't ready to go to college. When I went to college, I was 18 and a half years old, and I was not ready to go to college. I was not smart or mature enough to be on my own. I don't know how you did it at 17, but hats off to you because it paid off. And what I like about this, it sounds like Jasmine is like a 3rd-generation entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And maybe your grandparents were too, I don't know, but definitely your mother and father owned the restaurant business, the wholesale business in Vegas, and then you taking over, you're working with them and starting your own deal, then going to Ameriprise and I gotta validate what you said about going to Ameriprise. There is something special for a large financial firm. That is, to me, it's the model for the way financial firms should do work. Those large Fortune 5, Fortune 200 companies. And I mean, of course, your side of the business is being run by Bill Williams, and I'll shout out to you, Bill, because I know you're listening. I mean, one of my favorite people on the planet is Bill, and you guys, he's definitely creating an amazing thing on the franchise owner side of the organization, as well as the employee side too. They're doing amazing things over there too. So But okay, so I asked you this question when we were talking. I don't know if I did. I think we talked about books a little bit, but and maybe this is the answer. But when you were growing up, who or what were some of your sources of inspiration?
Yeah, so the book that actually not only has changed, I would say, changed my life. The first book that changed my life, and it was just I fell in love with reading. Made me fall in love with reading, and I probably read, I don't know, 2 to 3 books a month now. I just really love reading. It was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And Jasmine has read it. It's my number one book to give to any kid to begin with. And it's not a kid's book. It's probably, but it can be read. And I read it in a flight. I remember I was coming home from Argentina. I used to spend my summers in high school in Argentina, and my aunt gave it to me to read on a flight. And it's a 14-hour flight from Las Vegas to Buenos Aires. And I read the entire book on that flight. I just fell in love with the journey. And if you read the book, it's all about purpose. It's all about finding out who do you want to be in life, and how do you really find that meaningful work and passion, and really have that ignite the fire that lives within us, and have that become your journey in life. And that's one of my favorite books. And then, Ayn Rand. I have Ayn Rand sitting both. Atlas Shrugged, I have to give it to Tacheny. I wear a Tacheny bracelet. But Ayn Rand and The Fountainheads and Atlas Shrugged, they're my favorite as well.
Yeah, so Bamboo Pack member, she's referring to Atlas Shrugged was a book written by a former Russian who came over to the United States, wrote a book called Atlas Shrugged. It's, I think, 1,200 pages long. And one of the main characters in there is Dagny Taggart, who runs Taggart Transcontinental Railroad Company. And there are several main characters in this book, but she's one that really stands out. She's a female CEO, or I don't think she's the CEO of the company. She's like the one who keeps the company going. And the way she processes life on such a rational thought basis, and she's an incredible inspiration. And I would recommend anyone, The Alchemist as well. I've read The Alchemist 2 or 3 times. In fact, it's funny because I want to give a shout out to actually one of my very best friends that I'm actually in his home right now. I'm in the home of Steve Lewis in East Grand Rapids. He's we call each other chum. He's allowed me to set up the micro studio here in his kitchen as we record today's podcast. And it was a mutual friend of ours years ago recommended The Alchemist to me. And we were I don't remember where we were, and I picked it up and read it and really liked it. I think I read it once since then, about 3 or 4 years ago I read. But Atlas Shrugged is a book that the Library of Congress and the Reader's Digest did a combined study several years ago, and they found out that behind the Bible, the Atlas Shrugged is the most influential book to its readers in American history. To the people who read it, it changes them more than any other book other than the Bible. And it's certainly not a religious book by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, Ayn Rand was an atheist. But it just talks about how to become efficacious and get through life and do things to get the work done, instead of excuses and bureaucracy. So I'm going to give a shout out to both of those books, because you can see, as you're just listening to Sabrina talk, she epitomizes this character, Dagny Taggart, in so many ways. So it clearly had a big impact on her, and it definitely had a big impact on me. So Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, recommend it. And it was funny because when we talked, Sabrina was on a couple of weeks ago, you're like, this book can be a little controversial, Atlas Shrugged. And I don't know why it is, but I brought it up in many circles. Most of the time, people have never heard of it, because it is considered the most intellectually challenging book to read of the 20th century. So most people have never heard of it. Those who have and read it loved it. Those who have heard about it but didn't read it, they're like, oh my gosh, that book is not, I've heard bad things about that book, Like, no, read it. You'll get it right away. As soon as you read it, you'll understand this is just a book about getting through life and making good things happen. Entrepreneurship, leadership. But, before we get to the tough questions, Sabrina, what would you say you can pick the time frame, the last year or two, 2-3 years, whatever it might be. What has been your greatest learning?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, COVID and going through whatever that was,
Exactly.
right? It's how crucially important cognitivity of human to human is, and how it's so important for us to all remember that, and we tend to forget this sometimes, right? In the hamster wheel that we run, and the day to day, and being able to achieve whatever you're looking to achieve through the day and so forth, but to pause and reach out and to each other and have that genuine, authentic connection. And so it has really taught me to slow down, and be able to just be there more for everybody around me and show up differently. And what does showing up differently mean? And how do I, instead of managing my time, how am I managing my energy so that I can be more present in my true authentic self with those around me? And so that has been my biggest learning, and continues to be honestly, Brian, because I have always operated, like I said, I was always great in math, and my mom having me skip the grade. And so I have a very logical mind, but I also have a very creative mind. And I have one of my best friends, who actually was my very first friend in the United States, and we just reconnected. She just challenged me, and her name is Paige Elizabeth, and she just challenged me to, how do you kind of tap into this creative mind even more? How do you tap into your heart even more than what you have been? And through that heart and through that connection to that creativity, really create a greater change and leave greater change to those around you and those places that you are part of today. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit deeper, but that's my greatest learning in the past couple of years.
What I really loved about what you said is you used the term, for the first time anyone I think has used it on this podcast, is the term managing energy. I mean, when I teach, the fabled time management processes and theories out there, I tell my clients right up front, there is no such thing as time management. Time does not give a rat's behind about you or me. It just keeps going. You can't manage time. Like you can't manage gravity. You can't manage a lot of it. It's a natural process. You can manage the energy that you utilize and how you utilize it within the time frame you have. And I think when we focus on the energy that we can, in managing that, then we do the things like you said. We're able to pause more, to reach out to people, to connect. We're able to be more present and show up more authentically, because we're saying, I'm not managing time. Time's unmanageable, but I'm managing the energy how I utilize the energy I have within the time that I'm allotted. And I think that's very powerful. So, hey, Paige, good question, good challenge for Sabrina. You are definitely a good friend out there. So that's a good challenge. All right. Now, Sabrina, this is a question I ask every guest, and I always give my guests the opportunity to decline this answer if they'd like to. It is the heart and soul of people getting to know each other and showing vulnerability. And so I'm going to ask it. If you'd like to share, the question is, what is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, or difficult things? And then how did you scale those walls? How did you overcome those?
Yeah, Brian. I had quite a bit of different experiences through my life, having lived in Argentina and then the United States, and obviously losing my mom was very difficult. So, but I'll share a little bit about it. So you asked before why, and I hesitated to answer this question. Why didn't you? Did you go after you graduated from 16 in high school right into college? And I actually didn't. And I spent 6 months in Argentina. And part of those 6 months that I spent in Argentina was to heal from what happened to me. and I'm going to get emotional again.
You take all the time you need, my friend.
When I was 16 years old, I was sexually assaulted, abused, raped at a party. It was a college party. Shouldn't have probably been there, but I was assaulted by actually a couple of guys as I was fighting them on. At one point, I decided I kept on fighting, and one of them stabbed me in my leg, and I still have the scar there, and I never wanted to have it removed because it always reminds me of what I have gone through, and what I have overcome within myself, and how I'm showing up each and every day. But that was one of the most traumatic experiences that I have gone through. And after going through that, as you can, anybody that's been abused, any kind of abuse, right? And there's no small or big part of abuse is what it means to you and the journey of your own personal healing that you have to go through. I had to really, I had a lot of questions about myself. I questioned, I created a lot of shame for myself. I was ashamed of me, of who I was, I questioned my decision-making process. You go through so much. And I decided that, I was graduating high school. I was 16 years old. And I said, I need to go back to Argentina. And I needed to go back to my foundation, who, the individuals that knew Sabrina as a little girl and loved her no matter what, and really heal through that process. And it was amazing going through those 6 months and being able to really find out who I wanted to become, how I wanted this event to affect me, how I was perceiving the men who did this to me, and if I wanted to hold resentment in my heart and forgiveness. And it wasn't easy to go through this process, but I can tell you that I am so grateful today that I was able to go through that process. No, I do not. I would never wish that to happen to anybody. It terrifies me having my daughter go through any sort of similar experience. But I also know that if I hadn't gone through that, I don't know if I would have gone through Argentina, reconnected to my inner child, to myself, to so much of who I was, and the people around me, and my family is so amazing. My grandmothers, who are honestly my greatest inspirations, and the women who they were. They quick side note, they actually, my grandmother was widowed at 33 with 3 young children in a country and in a time where women didn't work and didn't have anything. She married the love of her life. She didn't want to remarried. And so she decided to start her own business, sewing wedding dresses. And the last wedding dress that she ever did, it was mine. And so being able to spend those 6 months back with my grandmother at that age, and so much of that time I'm so grateful to have gone through that experience and gained so much of my resilience due to it. So,
wow. I'm almost speechless. I stopped writing for most of what you just said, Sabrina. And I shared this with you as we talked on the phone prior. I was also abused as a young boy when I was 5 years old. And I did a podcast on it back in June of last year called Your Dark Side, Controlling the Fire. And I aired it out there at that time to the podcasting world. And I feel the same way you do. And I'm so honored to be sitting here talking to somebody with such an incredibly heroic spirit. And I feel the same way. And my son has asked me, as I've shared with you prior, my son asked me one time what I felt about that happening to me. And I paused and I said, I would never wish it on anyone, especially a loved one, but I'm very grateful that it happened to me, because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And you don't hear a lot of people say that. So it's just an honor to have you answer that question and share with you the strength that you've carried. And the fact that you kept that scar purposely as a reminder of the resiliency and the grit and the power that you gained over that. I mean, I want the Bamboo Pack listener out there who's getting it right now with your jaw open and your mouth hanging open, and you're thinking about the struggles you're going through. And you're all going through struggles. I'm not downplaying your struggles at all. But so many of the struggles we go through they're not closed doors. They're open doors. They're an opportunity for us to show ourselves how badly we can get through stuff, how badly we want something that is now maybe you see an obstacle in front of you. Maybe you've hurt yourself, a financial scare, a marital scare, a relationship scare, a family scare, a health scare, financial scare, whatever. Those are opportunities for you to wear the scars you're wearing, metaphorically or literally, with pride to remind yourself of how strong you are becoming through the challenge. Man, that was powerful. When you said that you kept that scar, Sabrina, that was powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that.
And I'll share one more thing that I feel it. I don't know about you, and I know you share your story, but it taught me forgiveness. If I could forgive them, I can forgive anything. And I am grateful that I can let go. We are all people are going to hurt us. It's pain, right? But once you let go of and are able to forgive them yourself, whatever that situation is, you live in a place of more peaceful and in open-heartedness for, vulnerability and authenticity. Because it's not that nobody can harm you, but you know that you can have forgiveness in your heart.
Amen to that, 100%. We have a guest coming on here, I believe in 3 weeks, Sabrina. His name is Dr. Fred Luskin. He is a professor at Stanford University. He runs I think it's called the Forgiveness Project out there. And he and I had a lengthy conversation last Friday evening. And he really opened my eyes to the true power of what forgiveness does for us. And I can't wait to have him on the podcast, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I think he comes on the 30th of March. I think we record somewhere in there. So he really opened my eyes because I wasn't really good at forgiveness until probably the last few years maybe the last 10, 12 years. For what happened to me as a child. And then I really started working on the forgiveness, and then I don't even feel the anger or any angst anymore over it. But I still find myself at times have to struggle with a little forgiveness. I got to work on my forgiveness in some other areas of my life, there's no doubt. So now, Sabrina, you've gone through an amazing journey. I forget how old you said, 30, 35, I forget you, I don't know what you said you were at the beginning.
I'm 40.
You're 40, okay. You said you're 40 years old, you got the amazing husband, you've got Jasmine, your career is really doing well, you got a lot of respect and credibility in the professional world. What's a win for you? What do you consider to be a victory right now at this stage in your life?
I think a win is every time that I can leave a place and a person a little bit better. I don't, I'm trying, I'm an achievement goal-oriented person. Anybody that knows me knows that I challenge myself to achieve those goals. I'm extremely competitive. But where I'm trying to operate more from a place of inner fulfillment and intrinsic motivation, and really, and that comes from when I know I'm making a difference in somebody else's life. That's why I love what I do. find me the person loves 100% of what they do, right? But if I can love 70% every time that I show up, and I find that a win. And because it's being able to have the relationship with my advisors, being able to, help them achieve what they're looking for in their personal life, as well, and of their business, right? Their business helps so much of them achieving what they want for their personal lives as well. So, and that comes through forms of challenge them through their thought process. Sometimes I can be a little bit tough, but that's just because I love you. And so I'm going to want to challenge your thoughts and push you a little bit more. And it also comes through genuine care for those individuals. So those are my wins.
I love it. And it goes right back to what you said earlier, managing since COVID, you've really focused on the pause, being present, and managing your energy. And when you do that, it's amazing how much inner fulfillment you can have. It's when you focus your energy on making every person and place you go to be a little better off because you were there. I mean, that's the epitome. It's a perfect example of energy management right there. That's great stuff. I read a book last year, 2 years ago. I really fell into Brendan Burchard's stuff. He does a lot of peak performance consulting. He's got some very good material out there. And he talked about a person of influence has 3 roles. Our job is to teach others to think at a higher level, challenge them to grow personally and professionally, and role model for them. And when you were talking about what you just said about with the advisors, that's the first thing I thought of. Is she's teaching them to think at a higher level, she's challenging them to grow, to become a better person, and she's role modeling that for them. So I think, do you ever think about putting a book together in the future?
Yes, have definitely thought about it. More for the history of my family. I have a lot of amazing women. I'm an immigrant in the United States, but my grandparents are immigrants into Argentina, and there was a lot of amazing women along the way. You can probably tell I have a little bit of affiliation for women, yeah. And. Yeah. In their journey. And so, yes, I will definitely do that in the future, tell my entire family story in a book.
And what a great legacy to leave Jasmine, too. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we got a couple more questions here, Jasmine, before we wrap up this amazing story, man. This has been so great. This is one of my favorite questions. So if I were to fly down to Miami Beach, Florida today, and we were to jump in my time machine, and we're going to go back. Now, we're going to go back to a darker time of your life. You're going to go back to the moment after that 16-year-old when you were raped and abused. And you're going to sit down and talk to your younger self, your 16-year-old self. You're going to sit down and talk to her. And you're going to give her life advice, or you're going to give her some words of wisdom, recipes for success, whatever you want to call them. What would you say to your 16-year-old self?
I would just listen to your heart. Just listen to your heart. I don't think that, and that's probably a little bit touche, but the minute, it's funny that you talked about the values cards. I actually have a values card from Think to Perform in my desk. But it's just so important for us to always go inside of ourselves and do what is anchored to your own personal values. We all know what those are. Seek them if you have, I've gone through exercises to actually find them, right? Some have it naturally. I have gone through exercise. But if you are anchored to those, you're listening through your true self and act in that direction, the doors will open to fulfill your life.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me finish writing this down. Okay. So I'm going to take this advice that you just gave your former self, Sabrina. I'm going to talk directly to the Bamboo Pack listener out there who might be going through some challenges or just questioning something in life. Take a look at the advice Sabrina just gave her 16-year-old self. And we'd like to share that advice to you right now. Whatever you're going through in life, listen to your heart. It does sometimes sound a little cliche, or it sounds a little, but it's true. I mean, 15 years ago, I would have said, no, don't listen to yourself. Use your head, use your mind. But listen to your heart. Your intuition tells you a lot. When you allow yourself to slow down and be present with yourself, and you pause, as Sabrina said earlier, just listen to what you hear. Also, go inside yourself and do what is anchored to your own personal values, not someone else's values, not what values you think you should have or what other people around you have and you want to mimic them. No. Go inside yourself. Go inside yourself and do what is anchored to your own personal values. Because as she said, the third piece of advice, doors will open. They will. Doors are going to open, but if you're doing things that are against your values and you're not listening to your heart, the wrong doors are going to open. But if you're doing those other things that anchor, you're doing the activities and the habits and the behavior that's anchored to your true values, you're listening to your heart, the right doors are going to open. And those are the doors you want open. All right. So next journey, what's next for you, Sabrina, in life?
Yeah, so I think, there's no point of arrival on anything that we do, right? And I think the continuation of growth and leadership, and like as I mentioned, I absolutely love what I do. So it's continuing to challenge myself and becoming a better leader for my advisors. I'm also working in a new project. I mentioned my best friend Paige, Elizabeth. Her and I are working in a new project for women to create us a space where we can come together and we can help each other through self-mastery first and foremost, and then leading others and continuing to, we talk a lot about energy management and how important that is and the routines that we need in our lives in order to show up our best selves. So we're putting together, it's creatingthroughconnections.com is our website, but we're putting this project together to really support the women's space, right? And that a lot of times, like I said, there's a lot of inner journeys that we go through as women, and we want to be able to have the safe space to share with each other and empower each other, but mostly lift each other up.
I love that. I think we might need to get Paige Elizabeth on this podcast too.
You should.
She sounds like a pretty amazing person.
Yes, she wrote her own book already. So,
oh, geez. Yeah. Well, yeah, we have to get her on here then. Paige, reach out to me, please. Sabrina has my contact information. Is the website done, Sabrina, for this project?
We expect it to go live in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah. When it does go live, will you please shoot it over to me through email or text, and I'll make sure it goes in the show notes. Even if the podcast is already streaming, it'll directly go on the show notes, and it'll go out to all to the streaming platforms automatically.
Absolutely.
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be wonderful. Okay. My final question, Sabrina, and this is just what I call the net question because it catches anything I might have missed. And I had a Bamboo Pack member last week reach out. And he said, "I don't like your last question. I think there's a better way to word it." And he told me a better way, and I forgot it already. But so anyway, because it makes me feel like he said it kind of sounds like you don't know what you're doing at the end. But I don't know what I'm doing. This is my 78th episode. I'm still learning how to do podcasts. But so the question is there any question that you would have wished I would have asked you, or is there any that I didn't? Is there any final message you'd like to leave with the Bamboo Pack audience?
Yeah, Brian. And to you, we are always learning. So whoever said that, we're always getting better. There's no perfections. There's only striving for excellence, right? So I don't know if there is any last questions, but I do want to, we talked a little bit about this managed energy aspect of it. And I do want to leave the listeners, if anything, an example of how this shows up. Because like I said, there has been a significant change in my environment and how I operate. And so, so a couple of little tips that I've done within my calendar, and I run a fairly tight calendar, is first and foremost is if you see yourself doing a lot of different tasks within one day. So for an example, I can be talking to an advisor. I can be talking to Brian on a podcast on the same day. I could be doing a sales call. I could be doing a compliance call. All of those switch in my brain. it doesn't heal my energy. If I can help manage my calendar, and nothing's ever perfect, but if I can help manage my calendar where I'm going to show up and do all advisors calls one day, if I can do, I have workshops that I do, if I can do workshops back to back, for as an example, it allows me to show up in that same energy and run it myself more effectively throughout those days because I'm doing the same type of activity. So watch yourself and start observing yourself, how you're showing up. These are peak performers tasks that they do. Another thing that I do is I give a lot of presentations. And so there's a lot of energy that goes into the presentations. Do you have routines that are, it might be presentations that you do, or it might be something else that you do, but do you have routine to prep you into that energy that you need to show up, right? So for example, I listen to a specific type of music before my presentations to hype up my energy. I do a specific type of visualization meditation to put me in that space during that time. And I also have the same unwinding because now that I put so much energy, sometimes my presentations go on for 6 hours. I have to be able to unwind from my energy so I can replenish myself and be able to show up for my daughter or whoever is next from a more calmer space instead of that hyper energy. And so I unwind with completely different music. I do a little bit of meditation and breath work. And now I'm actually putting a yoga routine into my exit stage of that energy presence during presentation. So those are a quick little examples that I do. The last one that I would say is, look at your space. So what do I mean by that? Whenever I have to, if I do back-to-back meetings that I do, I'm in my home office a lot of times, right? But if I have to enter myself into a creative or strategic space, I actually have trained myself to go. I'm lucky I live on the beach. I can go outside on the beach. I can go in my pool deck, or I can go, even if it's my couch or my kitchen, but I get myself outside of my office to actually subconsciously, your body would enter this energy space and creative space differently. Not that you can't do it in your office, but I challenge everybody to honestly start watching themselves, their body, and where the energy actually flows, and how you can be at your peak level self if you actually do a couple of these tips and routines.
I just want to stop because every one of my clients who's listening, and I know most of them, if not all of them, do, I want you to listen to the last few minutes of this podcast a couple of times. I think you just validated so many of the things I believe in, Coach Sabrina. I call it batching your work. Like if you batch it, do similar activities during that same time frame so you get into this zone or the flow of it. And I love the routine thing that you said. I'm so glad you said that. I do before every podcast or every speech I give. And I've done this for several years. I pray first, hey, Lord, please lead me into doing these things. And I always have the same 7 things that I ask for. And then I look in the mirrar and I tell myself, during this time with Sabrina today, and I did this actually in the car at my Jeep on the way over here because I'm not in my office today. And I was driving. I wasn't looking in the mirror, but I say today during my time with Sabrina, I'm going to offer her as well as the Bamboo Pack audience and my family and myself. I'm going to do this for all of them. I'm going to be competent, confident, courageous, calm and in command, clear and concise, caring and considerate, creative and consistent. And I think I called them the 7 C's. I think there's actually 8 things there. I call them the 7 C's, and I do that in the mirror, and I do meditation usually for only about 3 to 5 minutes before every podcast. I didn't get a chance to do it today because I was driving. I tried to get here. All the podcast equipment had been set up earlier, but I was trying to get here on time to make sure had a few minutes available to make sure everything was perfect for the podcast. But those are things that, and people don't see the value in that. And it's so powerful to get your mindset. I don't do what you just said though. And the one piece of advice that you just taught me, which is amazing, is have a routine afterward of releasing that energy, or however you said it, have some type of yoga or meditation or something afterward. Don't just jump to the next thing. And that's a really valuable lesson you just taught me. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Oh, Sabrina, thank you, man. We just spent 1 hour and 3 minutes and 29 seconds going through a really amazing journey. And after talking to you a couple of weeks ago, I knew this was going to be an amazing podcast. And of course, all the people who mentioned your name and said, you got to get Sabrina Tacheny on the phone. It was like, okay, I will. Okay. I'm so grateful for all of them. And most importantly, I'm grateful for you, not just for coming on the podcast today, but I learned so much more about you today that really inspires me to realize there are some amazing human beings out there. I've been blessed with this podcast and my clients to be able to meet a lot of people, but this was you stepped it up a notch today for just your journey and the story you shared about what happened to you as a young girl and how you carried that and turned it into something so damn powerful. So I can't thank you enough for being the person you are. And it's an honor to share this planet with you. And for today, all I can say is I just want to thank you for being such an amazing and inspiring guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you and the opportunity, Brian, and to be able to share, and all your listeners. And for the Colombia friends, hola, mucho gusto y bienvenidos.
I love it. We're going to have you back on again. Maybe we can do you and Paige Elizabeth together, do something about managing energy and talking about the things that you're working on. I think that would be great. But I would really like to pick your brain more on this energy management process. You seem to be more advanced than I am in that category, and it's a category that really fascinates me. So we'll talk again pretty soon. So do you have a couple of minutes after we're done recording today? Just a couple of minutes before you get back to your busy day?
Of course.
Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you again. I'm going to sign off today. Bamboo Pack members, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all that you do to make this podcast so successful and so growing so well across the world. Please, if you like what you heard today, and I know you will, hit that like button. Get out there, rate and review us. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. But most importantly, this is the particular episode to share with 3 people. This is how we change the world, is one amazing human being like Sabrina sharing her story, her journey, being vulnerable, and sharing how she's grown through life because of the scars of life sometimes. So please share this with 3 people. In the meantime, please get out there and sculpt your life, everyone. Get out there and sculpt your life. Truly rise to that level, that highest level. Live your true peak identity. And with that, inspire the world. I hope you all know by now, but I'll say it again. I appreciate each and every single one of you.